So now we are going to take it to our next panel, where we're going to talk about ways to motivate and incentivize companies to take action for net zero goals without any mandates. So without further ado, I would love to present our speakers. First, we have Angel Gimenez Palazon, Head of Energy and Sustainability at BBVA Spain. Next, we have Matt Konieczny, Head of Decarbonization at Watershed. Next, we have Anton, Kotov, Head of Corporate Strategy and MA at ABB. Next, we have Cristian Carraretto, Head of Energy Transition, Climate Strategy and Delivery Group at EBRD. And our wonderful moderator, Joaquin Munoz, Partner, Corporate Sustainability and Climate Change at ERM. Thank you.
Hello, everyone. Thank you for being here. Thank you to all of the panelists. Eventually, shall we do just a quick first introduction? Angel, if you want.
Okay, this is Anton Gimenez. I've been introduced already from BBVA. For those that don't know BBVA, originally from Bilbao. We are a global bank in 25 countries, 80 million clients, and we have a very strong agenda in terms of sustainability, a very strong agenda in terms of how we approach our clients in terms of finance emissions, Scope 3, and the way we are helping our clients to transition to a net zero world.
Thank you.
And hi, everyone. I'm Matt Konieczny. I work at Watershed. We are a software platform that helps companies measure and manage their carbon emissions. So companies like BBVA, JP Morgan, Walmart, they use our software platform to understand how big their carbon footprint is, where the hotspots are, and then set a path to decarbonization.
Hey, good morning. Anton, Kotov, leading corporate strategy and M&A for ABB. In ABB, we help companies outrun lean and cleaner. It means we bring solutions in electrification and automation for sustainability and resource efficiency. We've been around for 140 years, around 100 countries, with more than 100,000 people in the company. And for sure, sustainability is in the core of everything that we do.
And Cristian Carraretto, at the end of the day, you need money to do all of the above, so we provide finance, right? So I'm part of a multilateral bank with a geographic focus. It's a former Soviet Union, North Africa, Eastern Central Europe, and now we're expanding to Sub-Saharan Africa and Iraq. Traditionally, our role is in the clean tech space to facilitate the technology transfer and opening up of markets in developing countries. Just to give a sense, last year we lent close to 17 billion euros and mobilized another 26, and half of that was around climate and energy technologies.
Fantastic. Thank you all. So I'm Joaquin Munoz, so partner at ERM, a leading sustainability consultancy firm, and specialize on corporate sustainability and climate change. And thank you, all of you, for, I think it will be very interesting what we're going to share. I just wanted eventually just to set the scene, to share at ERM. We do have a ERM Institute, and that the latest report we issue in February 2025 on what are the trends. And I'm just sharing, just for putting the scene here, we're going to talk about driving corporate net zero. And I hope all of you know what net zero means today and how to motivate and incentivize, beyond compliance, beyond all the huge regulatory context we had for the last years. Key, I will say, takeaways from the study we performed early this year. Emission trends, globally speaking, are really going in the worst scenarios, I would say, 3.1 at the latest. For instance, if you think about a 2% scenario, so 1 degree less, we're talking about 4 times more drought in Europe in particular, or even events like the one we've seen in Valencia, big flow-ins, and with the consequence of having up to $30 billion economic damages related to this kind of extreme weather events. However, renewable energies investment are still surging, and there is a transition towards clearly renewable energies, and that's something all of you've poured off, and I think it's something we can comment during the panel. COP29 and the political drive here, I think, is really important because, of course, it's a common goal to limit and to, if possible, align with the Paris Agreement, 1.5, by the way. But then the transition finance, no? And how we, through the transition finance, there's been an agreement, $300 billion of investment, Western countries compared to Global South in particular, and with a lot of new technologies, and that's is really important and relevant for this forum. But apart from this, financing, the scale-up, and the clean tech transfer, and widespread, I will say, new technologies related to clean tech. No? Many countries still don't have a net zero ambition and target, and that's something relevant for the Global South, where you have to combine, of course, development growth with a decarbonized way to perform this growth. Carbon markets need to work, and clearly there is also still agreements to be set, I will say, and then give stability for corporates, for investors, no, to further scale up the carbon markets. And we will see, and I guess you will share examples, climate actions is becoming a competitiveness issues for companies, in particular large companies, but not only, even now small, medium, and there is, I mean, many opportunities. When we talk about the trajectory is more at the beginning to think about risk. We have to handle, to forecast, and how we face and we mitigate those risks, climate change risk. But not only, no? And if you see the corporate response to this situation related to climate change, 59% of companies claim that acute physical risk is one of the main concerns, and that was from a survey from Allianz Insurance, and 56 saying that interruption of the supply chain is one of also the second one impact they see and they fear. And we do see that, and we're going to talk about transition plans and how to build up, confidence about the fact that the company and the financing linked to the company, they can face those new risks. No? And new things also coming up, avoided emissions in the GHG accountancy, avoided being the non-direct link to the supply chain, value chain production, but really relevant if you think about agriculture or primary industry. No? And we're thinking about here also the methane agreement related to agriculture or extractive. And surging of power demand, because we have to align with the Paris Agreement 1.5. So we have to make a collective effort, private, public, global south, Western countries, but with a growing demand for power, and in particular electricity demand. No? Then some recommendation, but I'm not going to go into detail because I think the panel will clearly go for the recommendation. So eventually, first question to the industry you are, Anton.
Sure.
What has been, the impact? Let's talk first about compliance and EU Green Deal, which has been a hot topic in the renewable areas, recently. So what has been the impact of Green Deal, and in particular, eventually, all the new CSRD, the corporate sustainability reporting, or other legislation in EBRD, in your operations and with your clients?
Sure, no, absolutely. I think the impact of CSRD, SRS, the Green Deal has been quite massive. I would say it's also a double-edged sword. On one hand side, positively, for sure, it activated quite a lot of processes in the company. It brought a lot of attention, and I think it catalyzed the action related to climate. Definitely we've joined as BTI, align our targets with 1.5 degrees. I think it's been a lot of action in the company, and positively also it pushed us to work much closer with the peers. I can tell later about how we do it also in the industry, also with our stakeholders, with customers. But at the same time, it sort of hijacked everyone's attention on the reporting, on the disclosure and compliance. I would say that's the side effect, the other side of the coin, because it literally took our teams by storm to really spend a lot of time first understanding what needs to be disclosed, reported, then kind of try to figure out how we do it. A lot of resources have been put there, and we almost caught ourselves in the situation where we were mostly thinking, like, okay, what do we report, how we do it, how we get the data, and then actually thinking, okay, how do we in the end help our customers to solve the climate challenges? I think now we kind of are stabilizing, but the first reaction was like, oh, reporting, disclosure, requirements. And that was, I would say, there was the other side of the coin.
No, fantastic. Thank you, Anton. Eventually, Angel, from a bank perspective, large bank you are, how do you feel also with Green Deal or legislations?
I feel the same. Basically, I cannot agree more on those statements. Basically, it was the same at the beginning. It's like reporting everything. The good thing is on the recent omnibus proposal about simplifying the process, etc., and how to simplify the way we report things, whatever we're reporting, whatever information we are gathering for either clients or internally, provides or not value, which is one of the things that we were always thinking on whether it's something that we can use to help our clients or our supply chains to decarbonize. So the simplification is going to be is something refreshing for big companies. And the other thing, something Anton was saying at the beginning as well, is that it moves the company not only on the reporting side, but also many teams saying, okay, this is what's coming for us. It will come something similar for most of our clients at some point. So we need to start thinking on new solutions based on what we're seeing on reporting, but new solutions for those small, medium, large corporates that at some point they will get into that, whether either because they are part of the supply chains or otherwise. So the good thing is we are able to bring new solutions to clients basically based on what's going on in the European Commission.
No, really interesting, and thank you for sharing. Truly, I mean, now we're going to talk about beyond compliance, not beyond these rules, additional rules, in particular in Europe, that have been set. How to incentivize, and how to, reach the ambition target, 1.5. The urgency to reach this alignment and see how we transform business model towards low carbon economy and low carbon business model. Eventually, first question to you again, Anton, on, there is a concept of transition plan, which is how you set, this objective and how you explain you're going to reach this objective 1.5. How have you implemented, and can you give us, some insight about how you do it?
Absolutely, I think that's the benefit of this impact that the regulation has created, because we galvanized our objectives in the midterm for 2030, reaching the scope 1 and 2 reduction by 80%, and then scope 3 by 25, and then a net zero by 2050, reaching 100% in scope 1 and 2, and 90% of scope 3. But also, it really helped us understand, like, what is the story, where we have the issues. I think identify the low-hanging fruits. Scope 1 and 2 was pretty easy, I would say, and then the last mile is to really work on the gas heating that we have in our facilities. I think the rest was relatively easy to fix. But then now it's spotlighted the scope 3 story and helped us, activate the engagement with our suppliers on the upstream side, but also to see how do we manage our portfolio on the downstream. Because for sure, strictly speaking, if you look at our scope 3 emissions, 90% come from one offer, which is the motors, because we're global leaders in the motors. It triggered the question, like, okay, of course, the easiest, if we want to reduce the scope 3, we just don't have it. We don't have it in our portfolio. But is it the right thing to do? Of course not, because we provide the world's most efficient motors. We have the world turning, and just like working on the portfolio action would make no sense. So for us, it actually highlighted the attention to the way, how do we address it? And also, you mentioned on the presentation that it spotlighted the story of the avoided emissions for the customers, which in ABB we do help customers to achieve, and also, of course, went beyond the climate story and the carbon I think we started working massively and we improved quite a bit on the circularity initiatives, working with the peers also on how we align on the environmental product declarations, on product carbon footprints, and not only just bringing the common denominator so we can really build the industry sort of a benchmark, because even a few years ago it was very difficult to compare. It was all apple and oranges, how we deliver, which products come from different players in the market and how they compare to each other. I think it's getting more comparable, but also to really improve the features of our offering to make it more circular and sustainable.
Okay.
So a lot of good things, I would say.
Okay, no, fantastic. Thank you. Angel, as a follow-up also, how do you see, transition plans and to incentivize, companies, large, medium, to go for a transition plan?
Yeah, sure. Again, we align with Anton with just one difference. Scope 1 and 2 in our case as a bank is very easy to cover. Scope 3 in our case is our clients, our finance emissions, as we call it. And basically, when you're talking about transition plans, the way we see this is, if you have a transition plan for maybe 3 reasons. One, because for regulatory purposes or other reasons, or because you're a public company, you need to have it. Second one is you're part of the supply chain of another big company, and you are required at some point to report something. And the third one, which is the one we like a lot, is because you do believe there is a competitive advantage of just having a transition plan in any terms, just because your stakeholders are going to value that, your clients, etc., right? So basically, the way we understand this is we as a bank, although when we're talking about our Scope 3, our clients, and how our finance emissions affect ourselves, we are not just checking or trying to help our clients to transition those high emitted sectors just to transition, which we do, but we believe that there is a potential opportunity, and I think part of the Energy Tech Summit is about this, right? We said this opportunity just to cover all type of corporates, even individuals, that are trying to transition just because there is a reason behind that, there's competitiveness, or just it's because there are savings on investment that could provide returns at some point. So you want to incentivize to those companies or individuals that do not have an obligation right now, is you need to go in a way that show them that if there are technologies that are already profitable to go forward with them, or just providing some savings, you need to focus on that and telling them that they will even providing them some, again, cost savings, or they will provide them with a competitive advantage against their peers.
Oh, thank you very much, Angel. Eventually, Cristian, also this perspective, how to incentivize companies who are financing, to go for these longer-term perspective transition plans?
Yeah,
how to incentivize?
Our colleagues already touched on a number of very useful and fitting components. It's a journey, right? It's a long-term journey. You said that many countries don't yet have a net zero target or long-term strategies. Underneath, many companies don't, and we work in emerging markets, so more than in developed economies, this applies. And oftentimes, we have to work with clients at high climate transition risk, because maybe they have a lot of brown assets in their portfolio, or they don't have credible transition plans to start from. So in a way, step one is the stick. In order to receive financing from EBRD, the company has to commit to develop a credible decarbonization plan within the first, second years of our cooperation. So we give them time, but it's a requirement as part of the documentation that they need to develop a transition plan.
Yeah.
Then you can turn the table, depending on the circumstances, right? You can, if time allows, you can work with the client developing this transition plan upfront, and then use the plan to shape our financial instruments. So in recent years, we see more and more this role of heavy lifting upfront, and then designing a result-based instrument based on the company's commitment to implement the transition plan that they develop with us at the beginning. So with the sustainability instrument, which is certified by a third party, they set targets, periodically checked, and depending on them achieving or not those targets, the pricing of the instrument changes. Now, the advantage of this additional effort is that they can bring along additional investors. So they can tap into capital markets. So all of a sudden, you turn the challenge into an opportunity to scale up your investment basis. It's no longer EBRD only with its own ticket, but you can multiply it by several factors so that the company gets much more funding to deliver on its transition plan. And then the last step, like you just mentioned, the scope 3, is to work with these companies trying to transpose this climate action in their suppliers.
Yeah.
So in this, we've done a few cases where we lend on the previous conditions to our borrower, but then we also set up a line of credit or concessional finance or grants, depending on the circumstances, which the borrower will forward with suppliers upon these individual suppliers setting their own transition plans and moving towards the implementation of those plans. And the way this typically gets implemented is the grant is used to reduce the discount that the supplier negotiated with our client to secure its supply agreement. So the grant, in a way, offsets part of the price reduction, and so it's a physical incentive, a financial incentive to attract action on scope 3.
No, really interesting, in particular when we're thinking about also this transfer of technologies, clean tech, how then you can also go into the very first mile of the supply chain. Yeah. Matt, same question, transition plan, is how to incentivize, no? How you see from your clients and your expertise, in driving decarbonization?
I think every single person in this audience is dealing with a lot of uncertainty at the moment. Just in the back there, we were looking at the stock market as we were waiting to come in here, and it's up 6% yesterday. It's absolutely wild.
Let's check today.
Probably during this panel it has gone somewhere else. We're all dealing with this moment of wild uncertainty, and so are your customers. So are your peers, and that's what we need to operate in. And it's, I know there's one issue in America. I'm not American. I feel the need to specify that. I'm not American, but there is one issue that trumps all others in news cycles, but also CSRD is, pulled back all over the world. We're in this time where it's difficult to figure out what is going to happen next. And so I want to say a couple things that are certain. One, we work with 500 plus companies, large corporates. I'm not seeing people abandon their scope 3 programs. We just had a customer sign up to a long-term power price, power offtake, because they supply Lockheed Martin, not the first company you think of when you think of sustainability. Lockheed Martin makes helicopters for the British government. The British government has a scope 3 program. So somewhere up your chain, there is a scope 3 program, and even if it's just Apple and Walmart sitting at the top there, it flows down to many companies. So point one, the revenue at risk is a real issue, and companies need to be ready to deal with that. Point two, you need to strengthen your supply chain underneath you. So we see companies taking a lot of effort to work with their suppliers in order to make sure that they are insulated from changes that might come in the future. The same way that you might treat any other supply chain strengthening activities, sustainability should be treated the same way. Anton made some interesting points about kind of the, this is what we do as ABB as a program. This, we build motors. This is our story. And so I think this is point 3, which is sustainability had this real moment in the last 4 years where it was just like, do whatever you want. Money was flowing. Times were great. Ironically, that was unsustainable. We're in a period where companies no longer want to, I'm being a bit tongue-in-cheek here, but they don't want to plant trees in some far-flung country. They don't want their sustainability program to be about charity, and it's the responsibility of everybody in this room and everybody in the audience here to find ways to deliver real business value for them, because as long as you are part of a business, you need to be able to save money, you need to be able to make revenue, or you need to be able to amplify the story behind your business. And so in closing here, just two contrasting examples. Companies often, I think people say like, what was Microsoft doing? What is Walmart doing? Those are kind of the great examples. I'd actually challenge people to look at companies in a very different situation. Mahindra & Mahindra is a large industrial company in India. I would guess that there are no slides and corporate presentations there with pictures of polar bears and melting ice caps and things like that. They are making decisions on a business basis. And several years ago, they decided to introduce a carbon price because that way they could make a business-focused decision. Yeah. What is the cost of transitioning? And every decision they can make around sustainability can be treated the same way they make any decision in their business. Yeah. That led to unlocking a large green bond in 2021. It led to them strengthening their supply chain. And so we can look to companies, not just these leaders, especially in tech, who have huge margins and can do whatever they want and need to set their reputation as innovators. But companies that are just trying to get by, have tight margins, look to them as to what they're doing, and you see that there are a lot of value creation opportunities. So maybe I'll pause there and pass it back.
No, fantastic. No, thank you very much. And true, yeah, resilience, no? It's one, I think, big topic in these times of uncertainties, no? Eventually, just example of how also transition plans and this planning, not related to climate change, could de-risk business model of even medium-sized company. I don't know if, Cristian, you have any?
Well, it was quite interesting when Mark was referring to the risk of future revenues, right? And it's still surprising how often we come across companies, large and small, that don't necessarily have that deep awareness and focus on how to plan for a future rainy day. And so, in a way, since we committed to channel all our finance towards activities that are aligned with the Paris Accord, we started capturing this type of climate-related financial implications into the financial modeling of the cash flows and the financials of our clients. So it's in a way, our own homework gets reflected into the conversations with the finance team and the investment planning teams of the company. And we start having this type of conversations on future business disruptions associated with climate that they need to answer. Yeah. So it's not just because we started with shadow carbon prices in economies where carbon markets were not existing, right? But then we move beyond that. We look at how physical disruptions with higher or lower likelihood of event can hit their bottom line. And how can they de-risk? How can they prevent this big impact from happening? And you know, it so happened that in many of these countries, they actually experienced climate-related events like long periods of droughts or extreme heat waves that actually really hurt the companies. So it's not just a theoretic conversation on what will happen. 3 CEOs in the future from me, right? Who cares? I need to decide for the next 5 years. Let someone else care of the future of the company in 2040, right? But it's happening today, and also oftentimes decisions you make today will affect the bonus of 3 CEOs in the future, right? Because the classic example I was talking with you last week was we work with steelmakers. And oftentimes steelmakers need to take investment decisions today on some of their core processes, which once the decisions are made, will keep running 24/7 for the next 10 years. So you have a very specific time window where you take an investment decision, and that will affect 2035 in a way, and you can't change it until then. So it's very important to have awareness and take smart decisions. It's not so simple because the technology might not be there yet. Think about, again, still transition to hydrogen DRI. Is the technology available at commercial scale? Can I secure the supply of hydrogen for my DRI? But also, do I have internally a decision-making process that challenge this type of business models that brings along, the innovation at the investment committee? Does the investment committee have the power to decide towards investments that have a payback that goes beyond 3, 4, 5 years? So all of these conversations are complicated. It's easy to talk about them in Bilbao from a stand, right? But for them, unless you start having these conversations, you just avoid addressing the problem.
No, absolutely. But for sure, there is lots of startups or innovators here that will be part of the solution, of course. No? And eventually, for the last part of our discussion, I will focus on the barriers, no? And in particular the short-term barriers, no? You see from each of you, from your perspective, what barriers are the more important one to overcome in short term. And eventually we'll start with you, Anton, from your point of view, with internally at BB or even with your clients.
Sure, absolutely. Apart from what we were discussing, that it's been a bit hijacking the attention on the reporting priorly, I think just maybe to follow up on what you were talking, Cristian, is I think that the barriers that we have a little bit of the recency bias. I mean, we run the enterprise risk management, to give an example, in ABB, and it's a part of a corporate strategy activity. And sometimes we look in the rear mirror and say, okay, well, we've got some cyber security stories. So cyber security is the key risk. Oh, geopolitical instability, trade wars. Okay, that's the major risk. And I think that's a little bit on the agenda all the time, but we not always look in the long run. And I think actually the European Green Deal helped us to look more into the not only transition but also climate physical risks, which could be in the long run a major risks for the company. To really stop for a second and say, hey, how many factories, sites, distribution centers are prone to floods, forest fires, landslides, and whatever. These things may not have happened to our facilities lately, but hey, shall we take a look at what would be the costs of dealing with that? And actually, this is quite significant. But I think that's exactly a little bit the barrier, that we shouldn't be only looking in the backwards mirror and say, oh, that's happened lately, and that's exactly what we should be dealing with, but look in the long run on things that didn't happen to us.
No. Your perspective, Angel, also on the same topics about barriers.
Maybe on the financing side, as we are a bank. I mean, it depends. For instance, if you're talking about like large projects, which are first of a kind technology, right? The discussion is different because what you're thinking here is, okay, there might be a financing gap between how you get to a new type of technology, how you implement that in a big company or another process. And that's why we need funds, we need subsidies, we need banks to align at some point. And the other side of the coin is when you have technologies that are ready and that can be implemented at some point, as we were saying before, which are profitable, is something that you need to push in a way that the companies or they need to see that there is a way that they can benefit out of that. And the financing industry, we should be able to finance all of those projects. Just think we're in Spain, right? So everyone is thinking on the beach, and let's think on a hotel by the beach, or a hotel chain if you want. And before, maybe they just was thinking on a way to project the hotel. They want people to go there, but now you talk to them, you can discuss on maybe the next draft is going to affect because you cannot fill in the swimming pool for your clients, so maybe you're seeing a problem there. Or maybe you're seeing that the sea level is going to grow at some point, so maybe you need to invest in something just to protect the hotel so you can keep going, so that resiliency that you were talking before. So, and that type of investment is something that you can do, and as a bank, as those are our clients, and we want those clients to be resilient and competitive, we are going to finance that because we see that as a way of protecting that. So again, there are things that can be done with existing technologies, and there are things that will be a gap that needs to be filled in other ways. Just giving you an example on that one. Something that you know about the parametric insurance on whether there is a change in temperature or I don't know, there is a river near where you are producing some sort of drink or whatever, it goes below a certain level that you might not produce at some point. You are starting discussing this with client. We are talking about climate risk, but at the same time they see there is an opportunity for them just to cover that type of risk because they were not aware of that one. So there are new things that are coming up into the market just because of those, not just it's just beyond reporting, it's just beyond regulation. You are just, you can see things are coming, things are going to change. So you are able to identify those type of investments that could help you to survive in the long run. Those are the companies that are going to live for the long term, and those are the companies that, from a bank perspective, are going to be our clients in the future, basically.
Your point of view from a service provider of this
decarbonization,
what are the barriers?
I mean, I'd say two things. One is we signed up a new customer this morning, actually, and it was required. We were required to fill out a form that says we don't use child labor. Why on earth? I'm a software company. Like, why on earth do I need to say that? It's because we don't trust each other, companies, to do on a voluntary basis the right thing. And so I think one of the restrictions is all of us in the way we talk about this, and that if we talk to companies about sustainability as something they should do, you know, I am a die-hard, bleeding heart environmentalist, don't get me wrong. I think the path to getting this right is to talk to businesses the way they want to be talked to, and stop talking to them as if they're just going to do the right thing, because they won't. And they're not incentivized to do that. And so I think we need to enable businesses to transition into the climate economy. So if I were working in a sustainability team, I'd be looking at AI task forces in my company, whose job it is not to make all the purchasing decisions. Their job is to prepare the company for the future, to explain how the company is going to fit into that future, and to figure out where the opportunities lie. And I think one of the biggest impediments to advancing this is that we talk about this still in this charitable way. It's the right thing to do. I just don't think that that is going to work. And the second point I have to say, because I'm a software company, is this is a problem that spans your entire company. The carbon footprint is an excellent way of identifying where you have inefficiencies. We have a large customer that recently found out through their carbon accounting software module that they had offices where they were still paying utility bills, that they had closed down, but they were still paying the utility bill, and they only realized that because they saw, oh shit, I have a carbon footprint at that office, but we don't actually have an office there anymore. So there is this huge amount of data that you need to get your head around in order to identify where the problems and opportunities are, and working with good providers and finding a way to have good data hygiene around that. This is kind of a boring topic, but it is very important, and I think it is the underpinning of everything that companies are going to be able to do to be successful. And so kind of last closing point here, we still see CSRD has been delayed by 2 years for companies to file. We still see companies signing up because they realize CSRD is an opportunity for them to get their data in order. So they are still using the chance now, even though they don't need to report, to get ready, to get their data organized, because they see this coming need.
Yeah, thank you, Matt. We're coming to the end of this fantastic panel. Eventually, not much time for questions, but just to summarize a little bit, about what we've been discussing. Clearly, I mean, from the companies now, banks and industries exposed to the legislation compliance, there's been eventually an excess, but also as trigger and create awareness about the topic of decarbonization and the importance even and opportunities, I mean, risk, apparently many, but also opportunities. We talk about, in particular, those topics of involving supplier, what we call the scope 3, is really at stake, avoided emission even, like new topics coming up, and how also, because there is these supplier decarbonization plans in large company, it can trigger additionally, actions even to smaller companies, at the beginning of the supply chain. Interesting about, clearly there is risk and how to de-risk businesses, and on this, still room to perform things, in particular to be credible in front of financing entities, both private or even semi-public. And there is also their opportunity, and you said carrot and stick, starting with sticks, to have, present me a credible transition plan, but then incentive in financial rates reduce linked to green financing. And we've been discussing afterwards to resilience, in the supply chain, uncertainty, resilience, and how to face it. And of course, it's important then to take into account this new risk coming up in the enterprise now, risk management, and also in taking into account when the bank system, is assessing the payback, or at least the collection of the financing they give to their clients, and more those climate risks are coming up in the discussion with your clients. No? And very good examples in your companies, in the steel also sector. And I think also an important point is there are risks and opportunities, but let's change the mindset. I mean, internally, how to better integrate those risks into decision in the companies, but also externally, avoid just talking with the heart as environmentalists, but rather talk business around those opportunities on clean tech, on transitions, on business model more reliant, no? and resilient to climate, in particular physical climate risk. No? Thank you, all of you. I don't know if you have any last words in 1 minute or less.
No.
Well summarized. Yeah.
Scope
Well
3.
summarized.
Scope 3 is the.
Scope
Yeah,
3.
scope 3.
And feel
It's the
free
common word here.
to come to the panelists. They are really open to also answer additional questions.
Sure.
Thank you very much, all of you.
Thank you very much. Thank you.
Thank you, Joaquin.